Hello, all, and welcome to the Movie Bears podcast. I'm Brad Harris, and each week I'm joined by Hunky Harry Huggable Homos to discuss film, something we really, really love on this show. That's probably why the word movie is in our title.
Probably.
Maybe.
Go
With
figure,
me,
huh?
with me, and as usual, is Jim Pugliafico
Hello and welcome to the podcast, everyone.
and Will Lindis.
Hey, listeners, welcome back.
All right, so big show this week. We're actually doing an MBP Double Feature. Woo.
Love it.
So we actually have
Definitely
two.
giving people their money's worth this week.
That's right, and since you don't pay any money, that's really saying something.
Double return on investment.
That's right. You could even say we're double penetrating your movie sphere.
Oh, hey now. Wow. I should have done some stretching first.
Oh my. All right. So yeah, we are reviewing two movies this week. The new Seth MacFarlane comedy, A Million Ways to Die in the West, and the new Disney diva, whatever the hell you want to call it, movie, Maleficent, which is a modern-day Wicked-esque take on the Sleeping Beauty, cartoon mythos, what have you. But before we get into our reviews this week, we have a little bit of movie news. So for those watching live, I was actually bobbing my head along to our movie news sound effect that I know we have. It's even in real time. Like if you could see me with the sound, it would match up. Anyway, does not matter. Total aside. So some interesting movie news stuff this week. We're running kind of a briefaned, that's not really a word, but a shortened movie news segment this week because we do have a lot to talk about. But there are a couple of big points that we felt were definitely worth bringing up this week. Jim, I believe you have some Ant-Man news for us. Is that correct?
Yeah, so there's this movie called Ant-Man. It's those of you who do comics would probably know Ant-Man. It's a superhero comic movie that's been in the works now since 2006 or something like that. And Edgar Wright, who we know from, let's see, the world, Scott Pilgrim versus the World, and the Cornetto trilogy of Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, and
The World's End.
The World's End that we reviewed recently. He's been assigned as the director, and I think was he writing also, Will? As you know,
He was my understanding, and he's the type of guy that does a lot of his own writing, and he's been working very heavily on the script since, like you said, like 2006.
So the news this week is that he has stepped down from directing or having really anything to do with this movie after like 7 or 8 years of developing it, and left the project without a director. And I think to this day they're still scrambling to try to find somebody to replace him. Several people have been named, but I don't think anybody's actually taken the offer. And I don't know. I'm not really close to it. Maybe some of you are, but apparently the reason he left was due to creative differences between Edgar Wright and the studio. You can read into that what you want, but from what I'm hearing on blogs and other podcasts and stuff is that I think he probably started to feel the pressure of the major studios wrestling creative control away from him a little bit as the director. And so that's left the project kind of in limbo without a director. And who knows? I mean, if you take the writer and the director away, it doesn't seem like, I don't know when the movie was slated to go into production, Will, and be released, but it couldn't have been more than a couple of years away.
No, it's supposed to be part of the next wave. I think the initial release date, or what they've been advertising, is July 17th, 2015. So the time is nigh. It is right a year
just a
from
little
now.
more than a year, yeah. Which would be a crazy schedule if everybody was staying on board. But with the director leaving, I think it kind of throws a dark light over the project. So I think we could either expect, delays. Maybe they'll shelve the project for a while, but I just don't see somebody stepping in and picking it up and holding the release date.
Yeah, they really need someone to just come in and put the whole thing on their shoulders, carry the weight of 10 men, if you will.
Yeah, well, that would be a big feat to bring that one in. I think a lot of people were looking forward to that movie. Certainly a lot of Edgar Wright fans. Will, I don't know, where do you stand on it?
So I'm a huge Edgar Wright fan, and I'm a huge Marvel comic fan. So I've been really excited to have Edgar Wright helming a Marvel film, especially something like Ant-Man, who is a character that he's not a tentpole character. Like when you think if you're uninitiated into comic books, and I mention like Wolverine or the Hulk or Captain America, you can nod your head and go, yeah, I know those guys. But then you start talking about characters like Ant-Man, and this is a character with a much smaller audience, with maybe a less less renowned, less of an integral part in the Marvel universe for people again that aren't like diehard fans. So
that alone makes him cool.
Well, yeah. But having like this like crazy quirky director come in, who's got vision and be able to take this character and just really, I don't necessarily know reinvent them, but to really give them life on screen, I think that's the push that character needed for a mass audience. So with Edgar Wright out, and I've heard all sorts of different things, but I think a big portion of it is I'm hearing a lot of buzz that the Marvel Studios, kind of the top brass, is a little difficult to work with. They have a very specific vision for what they want to have happen, and so they churn through, like even the Iron Man films churned through a couple different directors. Kenneth Branagh stepped out after the first Thor. They're a hard studio to work for, and I think it's because they have such a big vision, they have such a big like long-term storyline that they're trying to tell, that they're really trying to rope all these things together, and it just didn't work for Edgar Wright. So I'm hoping they get someone else in who has. We've already got this script worked out. We've got this casting. We've got these action sequences that Edgar Wright has already like blocked through. He's like blocked through a lot of these action sequences. So I'm hoping that best case scenario would have been Edgar Wright staying on board. But at this point, I just want someone who maybe has similar sensibilities, or who can take what's already existing there and build off of it, as opposed to coming in and doing like a slash and burn type thing.
Right. Yeah, without too much disruption, because like I said, if you start throwing delays in there for a new director to come on board and get up to speed, now your casting is thrown into question, because acting talent that was available a specific time frame now is not available because they've already committed to other projects. So it can become really problematic. So we'll just have to keep an eye on this one. I'm sure that some news is going to come soon with regard to what they're going to do about this, either a new director or some other action, but we'll just have to see.
Indeed. All right. Will, you have some interesting Star Wars news tidbits, I believe.
I do. So one of the things that's been interesting about Star Wars Episode 7, the new J.J. Abrams Disney reboot, or not reboot, but a continuation of the two trilogies, is we've seen the first round of casting that came out. Finding out that like Oscar Isaac, Andy Serkis, and a lot of the Harrison Ford, Carrie Fisher, all of them are coming back. But they've recently announced 2 new additions to the cast, both of which have me over the moon excited. First of which is Lupita Nyong'o, who she won an Oscar for her supporting role in 12 Years a Slave. A very talented actress, and I'm very happy to see that her success from that film is catapulting her into, I guess more of like the public eye. And second is Gwendolyn Christie, who, that's not a name that maybe a lot of people know, but maybe they should. She plays Brienne of Tarth on Game of Thrones.
Is she gonna be? Is she gonna be Brienne of Darth Vader?
Oh my gosh. Mind blown on that. Brienne of Darth, I like that. So I'm happy with both of these casting decisions because they're both very talented, strong female actresses who maybe don't fit in like what you might think of as just kind of like the arm candy type mold, or like sometimes you'll watch some of these movies and you'll just get kind of like, I hate to say this, but like a generic blonde actress who's only there to like prop up the male leads. And it looks like they've cast some extremely strong women here who will help carve their own little niche in the Star Wars universe. Are you guys as pumped up about this as I am?
I am freaking excited. I'm super pumped about it. Jim is making a weird face at me because Jim is bored to tears by Star Wars casting news.
Directly at you.
I can feel your ire from the other room.
No, I'm not here.
No, I don't know. I think it's great. I love Lupita Nyong'o. You know, I really love the actress who plays Brienne of Tarth. I'm just interested to see like what their roles will be. I guess I'm hoping they're not just like, you know, brief on-screen like 30-second characters. I hope they're actually meaty roles because I think both actresses bring a lot to the table, and you know, it would be interesting to kind of see them get some meat. And I'm thinking because a lot of the actors that have already been announced seem to be kind of on the hero side of the cast, maybe. I'm wondering if Lupita is maybe going to be like 12 Years a Sith or something, like, you know, maybe she's a Sith Lord, maybe, you know, like, I don't know. I'm interested to see where it's going to go.
Right.
I can't say I'm super excited because I'm trying to keep a lid on my expectations for the movie. I guess I'm trying to keep it. I have my reasons for believing that it's going to be difficult for them to capture the magic of the first 3 films in another follow-up film. That's not to say that this film won't be good. I just don't know if it'll have that same magic for me. So the casting news is interesting. Specifically because there was it was about a month ago, right, where they had announced a whole bunch of the cast members, the primary cast, I think, and
Right.
I think for the vast majority of it, it was all guys. I think there maybe have been one female. I'm not sure, but
Yeah, something
and
like
and
that.
it got a lot. I think there was a lot of criticism leveled at the project because there weren't. You know, here we go again, right? Star Wars is going to be a sausage fest, right? And so it was getting really a lot of heat, and you got to wonder if this was something that's been in the works for a while and they were just able to announce it now, or it was some kind of knee-jerk reaction to the pushback from the community. We may never know that, but I think, Brad, you're right. I think it'll come down to what kind of roles that they give these 2 great actresses. I love watching you know, the Brienne character on Game of Thrones. I haven't really noticed her in anything else, so maybe it's time to maybe look back and see if we can find some other stuff that she's been in. And of course, Lupita we know from 12 Years a Slave, and she was excellent in that. So I think they're 2 talented actresses. We'll just have to see how they work out in the movie. In the bigger picture of, hey, how is this movie going to be? The other thing that worries me a little bit is with all the names that have been attached to this movie, it kind of sounds like a parade of stars as opposed to a cast that could maybe, I don't know. We'll have to see how JJ can pull it together into a cohesive, compelling story and not just a series of cameos. You know, that's what I'm afraid of.
Yeah, and we are dealing with the trilogy too, so it's very possible that these 2 casting announcements were made later on because they might be smaller characters in Episode 7 because they're going to be more important characters in Episode 8 and 9. Like, we're going to see some characters that aren't going to make it all the way through the trilogy. We're going to have some that only become popular or become like
introduced.
Yeah, introduced or that only come big later on. So,
right.
I mean, if they have a smaller role in this film, that's not necessarily a bad thing, as long as it's like introducing them for the later films. I mean, part of it's like we can't just, and this is the hard thing to say, like, you know, it's going to be hard to grade just this film because we're going to have to go through all 3 of them to see kind of the big picture stuff. One thing that does have me jazzed is they've released some some people have snuck some pictures on set, and they're using actual practical locations and sets for a lot of their shooting, at least what they've done so far, as opposed to just like a giant green screen like hodgepodge like they did with some of the second trilogy. So that has me excited. Like,
and it's kind of insane how much attention like one set picture gets on this project. It's kind of nuts.
Don't underestimate the power of Star Wars fans. Yeah, it is kind of crazy, but man, after the prequel trilogy sucked so bad, except for like the last half of 3, we're just, as Star Wars fans, I think we're really clamoring for something good. And I agree with you, Will. I'm super excited to see that, we're back to practical locations, because that's what makes the world feel real and feel lived in. It's one of the things I loved about the original trilogy. And with the prequel trilogy, like, you just know they're emoting in front of a green screen. And when your best emoter is Hayden, Christensen or whatever the fuck, it's kind of like, not so much. Not so much. Sorry.
Yeah.
Anyway. All right. Well, interesting stuff.
We could have a whole show just on Star Wars, and it's not even it's barely in pre-production. You know?
Yeah, I know, right?
I know. Wait till you're standing in line with me, dressed in costume for 3 days for tickets.
I'm looking forward to that excitement.
What costumes? Like, what are you guys going to be dressed as? Like, what's that?
I don't know. I got to think about it. I went as a Jedi for Episode 3, and like all these kids were like, "Oh my God, Mommy, it's a fat Jedi! Can I get my picture taken with him?"
It's the Jedi King.
I ate the Jedi.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
But yeah, so anyway, interesting. We'll see. All right. Okie doke, guys. Well, we do have a lot to talk about tonight, so I think if we're good, we'll go ahead and segue, yes?
Sure.
Yeah.
Segue away.
All right. So, moving on to our discussion of the new Seth MacFarlane, I guess you could call it a comedy.
Comedy juggernaut.
Comedy western, Kestern, whatever, I don't know. But here we go, our discussion of Seth MacFarlane's A Million Ways to Die in the West. All right, so as usual, good people of Movie Bears podcast listener land, we will begin this review with a non-spoiler discussion where we just give some very general advice on whether we think this movie is worth your time and money to go see, and then we'll give you ample spoilerage warning before we dive into the nitty-gritty plot details you may not want to hear. So, Will, why don't you kick us off? Should people go see this in theaters, wait for rental, or just avoid it?
Since you're fresh out of it. Since you're fresh out of seeing it.
Yeah, since you just saw it like half an hour ago.
Yeah, I just got back from seeing it. And we're in for a good time when, Brad, you described it as, I guess you can call it a comedy. Like, we're in for a good conversation when that's the way we describe a Seth MacFarlane film. Look, so there are a million ways to die in the West. So says the scatological comedy,
The West
right?
sucks.
Well, you've got gunfights and rattlesnake bites. You've got everything that the West can throw at you. But what I didn't realize, and the film did not advertise very well, is that apparently being bored to death is a very, very real possibility.
That's right.
Yeah, so the problem I had with this film is that I'm a Seth MacFarlane fan. I really enjoyed what he did with Ted. I know Family Guy gets ragged on quite a bit, but I think that there's a lot of, like, especially when they do very visual comedy jokes on that, there's a lot of good stuff happening on that show that outweighs the misses. So this is a guy that is talented. He knows how to write jokes. He knows how to make even like the background things on a set funny. But this film was just not funny. That's my measuring stick. Like, do I laugh? Did I laugh enough watching the film? And while there were a couple of chuckles, while there were a couple things that I did enjoy, those were so few and far between. There were long stretches where the film forgot to tell jokes at all, and then there were some times where they just kind of threw in like a dick and fart joke, and not even like a clever one or something that was just rip-roaringly funny. It was like sometimes they were just like, you know what, let's throw in a shit joke just because we need to. So I have a real hard time recommending anyone go watch this. And this is sad because after Ted, I was really excited to see what would be next for Seth MacFarlane, like what he would bring to the big screen next. They do a lot of like the premise of the film itself, that there's a bunch of ways to die in the West. There are some laughs that are to be had with some of the more over the top deaths, a lot of which you see in the trailer itself. There's just not enough of that. You have characters who have subplots that don't really go anywhere. And Seth MacFarlane, like, man, as much as I like the dude, like, I don't think he felt natural or charming or charismatic enough in this lead role that he wrote for himself. So there was just a lot of stuff that did not work for me. Unless you're an absolute diehard, I would say this is a pass. But even then, you know, there's other funnier stuff out right now.
Well, I wish I could say I love this movie and it was the funniest thing ever, but I'm gonna say that for me, Will, same thing. This just movie wasn't very good. You know, I'm not a huge Seth MacFarlane fan, and I knew that he had the capability to be. I don't watch Family Guy. It doesn't mean I don't like Seth MacFarlane. I don't watch him a lot. But what I have seen of him, you know, a couple of episodes of Family Guy here and there, you know, the monologue at the Oscars he did a couple of years ago, and some other things that he's done. I kind of, you know, I think I can appreciate him in small doses. And I mean, the Family Guy shows are generally what, like a half hour long, 20 minutes long? I don't know.
Yeah, you know, 22 minute.
Yeah. So I mean, I was hoping that this would be a good comedy diversion from all the summer blockbuster stuff, but it just wasn't that at all. And in the end, it just, like you, it didn't make me laugh nearly enough for a movie that unexcusably is almost 2 hours long, which I could not figure out. A movie like this has no business being over an hour and a half long. So I don't know what they were thinking, what they were trying to get in there. Like I said, he's a talented guy, and you know, another thing that bugged me was that it seemed like, okay, you got this guy Seth MacFarlane, he writes funny stuff for Family Guy, he kind of pushes the edge of what's acceptable. He likes to kind of test that envelope of what's acceptable on TV. So now he gets an R-rated vehicle to break that boundary. And what does he go with? He goes with toilet humor and fart jokes and poop jokes and just stuff that, I mean, it's kind of cringeworthy to see a guy that talented stooping to those levels on stuff that's just not funny. And we'll get into some of the spoilery stuff about that before. The other thing is, you know, a Western might seem like a weird choice, right? Especially since these days I don't think that genre does very well. We've had that discussion on this show before about how Westerns just don't really do very well, you know, comedy or no comedy. And I think maybe this, even that if we accept that it's a comedy, I think if this movie had gone maybe more and stayed with more of the sketch comedy stuff that he's famous for and he's good at, instead of trying to stuff a movie with this plot and this narrative that really just lengthened the movie and watered everything down, I think it would have been better. If we think back, a lot of people have compared this movie to like Blazing Saddles, because they're both westerns, they're both comedies, but this movie is nothing like Blazing Saddles. Blazing Saddles was like sketch piece after sketch piece after sketch piece, and it barely had any kind of narrative that kind of held it together. There was maybe more of a theme. So if I take the plot of this movie, which is a Western, there's a bad guy, there's a reluctant good guy, which is Seth MacFarlane. The actual stuff, if you take the comedy out, it's not that bad a Western. Actually, some of the acting was better when they weren't trying to be funny. I like Charlize Theron a lot in this movie. Didn't like Seth MacFarlane all that much, but some of the movie was pretty good. So all I can say is it's not a very good movie. I would not rush out to see it. If you're a real huge Seth MacFarlane fan, I would still say wait for it to come on DVD or Blu-ray. And yeah, I just not a good. You know, there were some things I liked about it, and we'll get into those in spoilers. And then we'll also probably come down pretty hard on some of the stuff that happened in it.
Yeah. All right. Let's see. For me, you know there's a problem when the best parts of your comedy movie are the non-comedy parts. And that's maybe a little harsh, but I'm right there with you, Will. Like I freaking love Family Guy most of the time. Sometimes the jokes go a little too far, and I know that's kind of the shtick. But for the most part, I really enjoy Family Guy. I liked Ted quite a bit. So going into this movie, like I tried to, toe the expectations management line shot. But I guess what I expected a little bit was just that, yeah, we'd have the same old, Seth MacFarlane comedy stuff. But what I didn't expect was how much of like a direct Family Guy translation this movie really is in a lot of ways, and not the best parts of Family Guy, like those jokes that they run and they run like 5 minutes too long, and you're like, this really isn't funny anymore. 3/4 of the movie seem like that for me, like that whole like, oh, let's talk about something, and now we'll have an aside where we show that same something happening, and now we've got a reaction shot to that same something happening. For me, it made it an exercise in frustration in a lot of ways, and I think that pulled me out of the movie quite a bit. I did like Charlize Theron. I think she's awesome. She's really the only like highlight of this movie for me. Neil Patrick Harris, I like him, but a little goes a long way. Then I had like 8 heaping hatfuls, way too much of him, unfortunately.
Oh my.
So that was just not so great for me. And then Liam Neeson is always a good time, but stereotypical Liam Neeson, like,
yeah,
it was okay, but I almost wish. I think you're right, Jim. I think if this had been a serious Western with some subtle comedic bits thrown in, I think it could have been beautiful. I think it could have been a great movie, a new take on the Western genre with a little bit of stylings of Seth MacFarlane. That could have been really fun. Instead, Will, you said it too. It's just one great big like shitstorm of fart and poop jokes, and unfortunately, it muddies up all the really good parts of the film. Which is unfortunate.
Wait, there's a cum joke in there too. So
there's a few cum jokes, yeah.
Yep, Sarah Silverman. But anyway, so the other thing for me is there were some cool cameos that I really liked. One of them is in one of the trailers. If you haven't seen this trailer, maybe it's a spoiler, but Doc Brown from Back to the Future is in one of the trailers with the DeLorean. I'm glad I didn't see that trailer because that was the part of the movie I laughed at the most, that I loved best. And if I'd seen that in the trailer, it would have just taken all the wind out of the sails, I guess. But I really loved that. That was awesome. But I mean, overall, like I probably give this movie like a C minus ish.
I think you're being very generous.
I think I'm being a little generous. I've been told lately I'm too negative on the Movie Bears podcast, so I'm trying to be a little nicer. Okay. All right.
I'm trying to deflect some of that criticism.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Don't worry. We'll pick up your slack on this one.
Yeah. So yeah. I mean, I would say definitely don't rush out to see this, on the big screen. And honestly, like if you like Seth MacFarlane, I'd say probably check out the Blu-ray. But I wouldn't make it a priority. Like maybe $4.99, like Walmart bargain bin Blu-rays in 5 years. I think you'd be fine.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's pretty much my take.
And the thing is that, we've talked about, like, we've all kind of mentioned that this film is nothing but, like, dick and fart jokes, that sort of thing. And the thing is that, done right, a movie that is just nothing but, like, puerile, gross-out humor can be really, really good. Jim, you mentioned Blazing Saddles, and there was a lot more to that film. But there's this one sequence in Blazing Saddles where they're just sitting around the campfire eating beans and farting. And it's a funny sequence in a funny movie. So what that film managed to do, what Blazing Saddles managed to do, is no matter what your topic is, if it's sophisticated, if it's gross-out humor, if it's somewhere in between, bottom line is it has to be funny, and that's what this film missed out on. Like, it threw all of this stuff on the wall, which is disgusting to think about, but it threw all that stuff on the wall to see what stuck, but it didn't do it with any rhyme or reason. It was just like it's like the writers of Family Guy just got around and said, well, what should happen next? Well, yeah, how about this happens next? And nothing was really connected comfortably.
I know, we'll make them have diarrhea. That'll work.
And the thing is there was a narrative that ran through this. There was a narrative that ran all the way through this thing and took up a lot of time, took up a lot of screen time. But it just the jokes didn't feel connected to the narrative. The narrative didn't feel connected to the characters. It was just all kind of just there. There was maybe there's the glimmer of a good film in there somewhere, but man, it's covered in so much shit, literally, that it would just be hard to find that diamond in the rough.
You talked about like if they had done kind of a more earnest take on a Western with a little comedy thrown in. There was flashes of that. I mean, there was a scene that made me laugh, and it was just a really small little thing where I think Charlize Theron meets is it Sarah Silverman for the first time? Oh no, it's the ex-girlfriend.
Oh, Amanda Seyfried, yeah.
Yeah, and you know, she says something about like your eyes are so fucking huge, you know, and I totally laughed at that joke. And it was just a kind of a throwaway line. It was more of a you know, what's the word I'm looking for? Observational kind of humor instead of forced. I don't know.
What I liked about that, and it's kind of burgeoning on spoilers a little bit maybe, but I like that it wasn't like that scene could have been different. Like it could have been Charlize Theron talking to someone else and being like, "Oh my God, did you see her eyes? Her eyes are so big that, you know, blah, 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 blah." And then we have an aside of, like, a visual, blah, 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 blah. And then we have a reaction shot to the visual of the blah, 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 blah. So I'm glad they didn't go that route, and I think that's what made it so funny, and that's why it was so good. But again, this movie just tries too freaking hard to give us those visual sight gags. And, you know, when you have to explain the sight gag and then show the sight gag and then show the reaction to the sight gag, it's just too much. Too much.
Yeah.
The other thing that was curious is this movie had basically one musical number in it. The Mustache song. I mean, Seth MacFarlane is a musically talented dude. I mean, he's, you know, he does a lot of stuff, I think, in Family Guy that's musically based, and a lot of it is very funny. Why wasn't there more? Why didn't they maybe think? I know that's not the movie we got, but we could have thrown in even some more musical comedy musical numbers that might have made it a little bit better.
I'm thinking, guys, we're getting dangerously close to spoilering people quite a bit. So maybe it's a good point to switch to spoilers. Would you guys agree?
Let's do it.
Yeah, let's pull the trigger.
All right, we are hereby mounting our spoiler horses and riding off into the spoiler sunset. So,
on the count of three.
If you're still hanging on in about 5 seconds, you are in supreme danger of being spoiled. So if you're listening or rather watching the live stream, now's your time to step away for 20 minutes, go heat up some Hot Pockets or something, and then come back. Otherwise, you listen at your own peril. Here we go. Spoilers. Fair game. Jim, I totally agree with you on the music. I really loved the Mustache song number. I really loved the Giovanni Ribisi like dance that he was doing.
Oh yeah, that was hilarious. That was
an awesome callback to Ted.
Yeah, yep. When he was dancing in front of the in Ted, it was him like sipping his drink and dancing in front of was it Tiffany who did I Think You're Alone Now or something like that? The video. Is that Tiffany?
Yeah. Gosh,
I'm not sure.
Tiffany did I think We're Alone Now.
Turn in my gay card. I forgot that one.
Yeah. But he's doing his funny little dance, and he definitely repeated it, and that was a good throwback to Ted, and I apprecited that.
Hey, Jim, would you stand up on your chair and do the
I can't do that. I can't do that. No, I can't. Nope.
All right.
Not gonna happen.
So musical number, that was good. Could have been more of a Men in Tightsy, I guess, kind of take with more music. That could have been fun.
Yeah.
What did you guys think, speaking of the mustache shot, of the Neil Patrick Harris stuff? So was it too much for you guys, or am I just being too curmudgeonly?
So the thing is I actually like Neil Patrick Harris. Yep. I think he is a very talented guy, and for me, a lot of Neil Patrick Harris goes a little way. Like he's the type of guy who I could just watch be himself all day. But the problem is that his material here was awful. So it was actually hard watching someone that, just like this film in general, like it was hard watching someone that I appreciate so much, that I respect so much, doing stuff that is way beneath their caliber. So yeah, I did not like the Neil Patrick Harris stuff, not because of him, just I think that he was doomed going into it with the script.
Yeah, I didn't mind the characterization that he had in the movie. You know, kind of the well-to-do, above everybody else, mustache guy. I didn't mind that. Yeah, I didn't mind that at all. I thought that was pretty cool. But they didn't really give him anything funny to do except shit in a hat for like 3 minutes, which went on like way, way too long. If they even had to put it in, it was like I don't know. I don't know. I don't find it funny. I know some people. Hey, Brad, in our screening, some people were rolling.
Oh, they were. They were. Yeah. This one guy was laughing so hard I thought he was going to shit himself. I was hoping he could use his popcorn bucket because I didn't want to give up my hat.
I was cringing and he was laughing. So it just goes to show you that there are different. Everybody has a different funny bone, and that's just not mine. One thing I did like, I liked the opening credit scene with the. Do you remember the big block like Western letters? Over the sweeping landscapes.
It was it was very Mary Kate Ashley Olsen Go Out West.
Really? Yeah, it was.
It was.
Which was also a throwback to like the old Bonanza and the High Chaparral kind of credit sequences. So I appreciated that.
I mean, the locales were nice. Like if we're talking about things that were a benefit to the film, like anytime you saw like a sweeping shot or just something in the background, like a lot of the terrain was really cool looking. So I'll give it that. And that opening sequence, like it was a little cheesy the way they put it together.
Yeah,
with, the letters, but it was cool crane shots or cool helicopter shots. So yeah.
Yeah, it was even a good horseback chase scene in this with the train and everything. I thought that was pretty good.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was okay. I liked it, and then, boy, I'm trying to like pick out the things. There was one scene that I thought was kind of cool, although it's been kind of overdone a little bit, and that's the peyote scene with the native tribe that he did, and the drug trip stuff that was after it, the kind of animated scene where everything was really like fucked up and exaggerated. I got a few chuckles out of that one.
Yeah, to be honest, that was like the second funniest part of the whole movie for me. Like when Patrick Stewart is like, "We guard the doors to the future." Like, oh my god, that's awesome. I love it.
Stewart's a sheep.
He is. I thought it was great, but it was kind of I don't know. Like again, that. The humor that I liked, some of it was in that scene where he's with the Native Americans. Again, it wasn't the deliberately like, okay, let's mention a gag, let's see the gag, let's react to the gag. It was, oh, I can speak your language because I'm a nerd and I don't hang out with people, so I have learned your language. I don't know. That was clever to me. That was smart. Yeah. It was kind of funny. But it was situational rather than like purposeful. Like gag humor, I guess, and that's the distinction for me, I think.
And the gags took away from like what could have been a really like gonzo out there premise. It's advertised as like there's a bunch of ways for people to die in the West, and almost all of those were just like an ice block drops on someone suddenly, and they go, "Oh my God, that went south really quickly," or just they're watching a guy like hawking something at the fair, and just suddenly a bull comes off of screen just randomly and shoves him off. That stuff was funny to me. Like maybe not the best stuff in the world, but it was still like it was very unexpected, came out of nowhere. A lot of interesting stuff where just like something was off frame and all of a sudden it's on frame. Like that's using a lot of different ways of like making something funny as opposed to just like telling a joke. What I would have liked to have seen out of this film is get rid of like a lot of the just the gag stuff, maybe even cut into the plot a little bit and just give us more shit like that. I think about something like a film that I think we were all pretty high on, which is This Is the End, which is a film that went way out there with its humor. Like it took its premise and it kept going, it kept pushing its own envelopes, and that's what I wanted this film to do. I wanted I wanted people dying left and right in just really crazy ways.
Yep.
Always, a little unexpected. Maybe like, oh, that guy's going to get it in this next screen. Oh, it's that dude. There's a lot of ways they could have really made that a satisfying watch, even just on the first, even just like a one-time watch, a disposable watch. But here, I mean, they veered away from that into just all this other crap that just weighed it down.
What did you guys think of the? Well, before we get to that, my other thought. What do you guys? How do you guys feel when you've seen a trailer? And I know I've saw the trailers for this movie a few times because, of course, every time we go to the movies, I mean, Brad and I typically like to arrive pretty early, get seats, and so we're subjected to a lot of these trailers several times. And so you see the scene, the ice block scene, several times over. Then you get to the movie, it's coming. Oh, this is the ice block scene. Will, how does that make you feel? Like, what are you feeling at that point? Here's
my thing. Like, that it's coming. It's coming because you saw it in the trailer. Everyone who was in that theater, if they were like me, there was me and my boyfriend Scott and 2 other people in the theater. So, but all 4 of us all saw it coming. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. That's what happens with trailers. The problem is that when you have a film like a comedy, you need to have more funny moments than you have time in your trailer. Like, you need to get there and say, yeah, the ice block thing was in the trailer, but did you also see the this, that, and the other thing?
Right.
Like Neighbors. That's one that now I had the benefit of watching it before I saw the trailer, but I then watched the trailer and compared it to the actual film, and there was a lot of funny stuff that happened in that film that was not in the trailer. So you get kind of a taste. It's like an appetizer, and then you go and you see the full film. Here, the funniest stuff was in the trailer, and then the rest is just turning a 2-minute trailer into a 110-minute waste of time.
Or you could have the ice block thing happen, and show that in the trailer. But maybe there's 2 or 3 other funny things that led up to it or came out of it. You know what I mean? Not just that's it and then cut to another scene. I guess when I see those scenes, especially the ice block scene, and there was a couple more. There was one with where he shoots the gun and he can't shoot straight, and he's trying to shoot the bottles, and eventually he walks up and knocks the bottles off. It's like, my feeling was, oh yeah, great, I've seen this thing so many times, it's not funny anymore, it's not funny in the movie, let's just get on to the next thing so I can see if there is something funny.
Right.
That's kind of the way I feel when I see that stuff in the movie.
And it's so unfortunate because a lot of that stuff is in the trailer, so it's coming. And, when you see it the first couple times, like the first couple things we've seen in a trailer, it's like, oh, okay, cool. But then when you realize that the best parts of the movie are what they showed you in the trailer, it leaves you, wondering why the stuff in between those bits isn't, isn't that great? And it makes
Why can't this be funny too?
Right, exactly, yeah.
I mean, if this film was like wall-to-wall laughs, like if you're just, the credits start rolling, you're laughing, even when there's little breather moments, you're just waiting for the next thing. If you then get to the ice block scene and you're already kind of riding that laugh, you can still laugh at something that you've seen before because you're kind of riding the high of the film, you're enjoying it, you're already got the giggles a little bit, so you can see that thing you saw in the trailer, you can laugh and then move on to the next thing. But when there's no laughs in between, it almost feels like, okay, now I gotta wait. Okay, here's the part where I'm supposed to laugh. Okay, now I can sit back and wait for the next part. And it's just, again, it's an exercise in frustration.
Indeed.
One other thing I liked, so we don't end on a really bad note, is I did like a lot of the uncredited cameos that were in this movie. There were a few that I caught.
Jason Lee.
Was it Jason Lee or Ryan Reynolds?
Oh, was it Ryan Reynolds?
It was Ryan
Reynolds got shot in the bar.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Ryan Reynolds, not Jason Lee. What am I thinking?
Yeah, that was a cool cameo. Ewan McGregor was in one scene at the fair. I don't know if you caught it, Will.
I did not catch Ewan McGregor.
Yeah, he was one of the. He didn't. I don't even know if he said anything. It was just it was kind of a reaction shot. Like there was a group of people standing in front of Seth MacFarlane when he was saying something about, everything wants to kill you in the West. And the guy's like, yeah, that's right. And that was Ewan McGregor.
Oh, sure enough. And he's even credited Cowboy at Fair on IMDb.
Yep.
Yeah, and you could see, of course, Jamie Foxx as Django.
Yep.
Showed up at the end. And that was kind of a funny but uncomfortable bit, I thought. I mean, the whole the shooting gallery scene.
I thought that was an actual, that was a legitimate laugh for me when they got to that part in the film and they see this incredibly racist shooting thing, and he even says that we shouldn't be doing that. That's so just seeing a very progressive character in this very everything's trying to kill you, everything's
why
racist,
are we doing
everything's wrong, that you can expand into a film. That stuff you can work with.
Right.
Not enough.
Indeed. All right, guys. Well, we're running out of time here to talk about Maleficent. I don't know. Are you guys ready to switch?
I think we should probably switch gears. We should probably, bury this.
I'm about to say, let's put this one out of its.
All right. All right. Here we go. We're going to switch tracks here. Sorry for giving you whiplash by moving so quickly, but. We are going to go ahead and discuss Disney's Maleficent.
On the count of 3. 1, 2, 3.
All right. So I actually think this movie should have been called Cheekbones and Leather, but I guess Maleficent is as good a title as any. As usual, we will go ahead and discuss this movie spoiler-free, at least for a little while, and give you our recommendations as to whether we think you should see it. Guys, this is going to be a really abbreviated version of the non-spoiler part of the discussion because we do want to be mindful of our time. So let's kick things off with Jim. Jim, what do you think? Should we see this in theaters? Skip it? What do you say?
Oh boy, this was a weird one for me. I didn't like it very much in the end. As you said, Brad, it's Disney's attempt to kind of wickedize their own classic movie, Sleeping Beauty. The classic Sleeping Beauty from 1959, of course, is an animated classic, hand-drawn animation style. Fairy tale movie, which is beloved by many, and it's a wonderful movie. This one is kind of a reimagining of that movie from the viewpoint of the villain from that movie, the evil fairy, or called Maleficent, of course. And this kind of is in a similar fashion to what Wicked did for Wizard of Oz, where they took a beloved story and kind of reimagined it from a different angle. The one main difference between how this one went about it versus Wicked is that this one actually changed some things in the story of Sleeping Beauty, whereas Wicked did not change anything. I mean, the witch still got the bucket of water. Things still happen in that movie. It was kind of a behind the curtain, if you will, view of the Wizard of Oz. But this one actually, I mean, some things were definitely different about this, and that kind of bugged me. And how successful this movie is for you is going to come down to how you take the modern styling and the story differences. Angelina Jolie as Maleficent. I thought she was good. I thought she was probably the best part of this movie. The problem is the best part of this movie is the appearance of Maleficent, and I don't necessarily mean the action of the character or her acting. Just looking at her, she was an awesome Maleficent. I also liked Elle Fanning quite a bit. She was always kind of the happy, smiling, charming little girl, princess to be. Kind of like she was in a Zoloft commercial. Like she was like overdosed on Zoloft. She was like so happy all the time and smiling. Most of the other actors, with one exception, the dude who played the sidekick, I thought were except for him, I thought him, Angelina Jolie, and Elle Fanning, I thought were pretty good. the rest of them I thought were very forgettable. We had our friend, what is his name? Sharlto Copley? What is his name?
Sharlto Copley. Yep.
Yeah. Again, just not very good here. Although I'm not sure how much of it was his fault. They wrote a king who was just kind of really kind of boring. I guess this movie was a special effects movie. I wasn't that impressed with a lot of the special effects. A lot of it looked like Oz the Great and Powerful or Jack the Giant Slayer kind of effects. It just wasn't very impressive to me. And we'll get into spoilers and talk about this stuff. In the end, I think this movie was totally forgettable. Maybe because it just seems so pointless to me as to make this movie. It seems like nowadays a lot of movies are taking these characters from these like minor characters, villains, side characters, and they all feel like they got to make a backstory. Let's make a backstory of this character and make that a full movie. I'm not sure that's a good idea in a lot of cases. Because first of all, you're always going to compare it to the main story. It's never going to stand up. I don't know how this movie could have been a lot better, but I just know that the movie that they gave us was just pretty forgettable. Other than Angelina Jolie standing around in the shadows and looking interesting, I didn't get a lot out of this movie.
Yeah, this is a hard one. I think it's ballsy that they made this film. I'll start off by that. That's kind of one of the big positives for it. Disney has taken one of its stories, which is Sleeping Beauty, one of its classic fairy tale, one of its Disney princesses, and one of the stories that is the most black and white. Like the black, the dark, the evil in that film was very evil. The good was very good, very pure. And what it did was it did a reimagining where it threw a lot of shades of gray on its own film. Like it's really easy for like Wicked to go in and do like a both the book series and the musical itself to do a reinvention of someone else's property because it's very subversive to take something else and turn it on its end. But Disney did that to their own property, so props for them taking that risk and doing it. The problem is that they did not land the execution. There was a lot here that kind of worked, but they ended up sabotaging it as the film went along. We'll talk more specifically in the spoilers about what those things are, but what really worked for me, I think some of the visuals worked really good, not all of them. I thought the design for Maleficent herself looked really good. When Maleficent herself was like smoldering, when she was when Angelina Jolie was playing like the more stoic, very classically evil, she played that stuff really well, and I liked it. There's some stuff where whenever she starts smiling or does some stuff that's like that kind of breaks that just like I'm quietly evil. That's where the character falls apart for me. We'll talk about why in spoilers they did not do something properly with that character. When the film gets really dark, it gets really interesting. There's some really dark stuff in this film, like damn near trigger warning stuff.
Yeah, we'll talk about that.
We'll talk about it in spoilers, but in the non-spoiler section, there is some trigger warning stuff, and that stuff is played extremely well. It's dark, it's uncomfortable, and it's meant to be, but the film then does a terrible job of like continuing that uncomfortable feeling. It then goes a different direction very, very sharply. So. Not the worst film of the year. There are other films I saw this year that I hated more, but I would also say this isn't a rush out and see it. Again, some of the visuals were cool, a lot of them weren't. Some of the acting was cool, a lot of it wasn't. Sharlto Copley was such a waste in this. Like, I'm starting to wonder if he's even an actor that I like, or if I just liked him in District 9, because I hated him in Elysium as well, and I remember we were talking on this podcast, like, oh, I'm disappointed in Sharlto Copley. Man, this is another strike against him. Even the closing credits, they play this version of the classic like Sleeping Beauty, I Know You, the I Know You song, yeah.
Once Upon a Dream, yeah.
that's a very like upbeat song in the original Sleeping Beauty. They do like a reimagined version of it just as the credits are rolling, and it's this dark, dreary slog of a version of the song, and that's almost like a good metaphor for the rest of this film. Like it's kind of a slog. It's kind of it just doesn't know where to take the ball and run with it. It's like it's so close to being a film that I could like, but it just fucks up so badly in a few areas that it makes it really, really hard to like the things that are good. So yeah, skip this one. It's definitely better than the other one that we talked about on today's show. It's a lot better than if it's between this and a million. Yeah, if it's between this and A Million Ways to Die in the West, go see Maleficent. But if you still need to catch up on like maybe X-Men from last week, or if you're if you're watching this a week later, watch something else instead.
Jim, you seem to have grown a cat out of your shoulder.
Yeah, I have.
That's Kira. That's Kira, everyone.
Yeah, she's gone now.
She's gone. She heard me say her name. Now she's going to try and barrel my door open. Will, I definitely see where you're coming from, and Jim, I see where you're coming from, and I think we're kind of largely in line on some of these things. For me, this movie was probably this year's Oz the Great and Powerful, and Jim, you kind of hit the nail on the head there. We didn't really have as much pot smoke in this movie as we did with that one, but hey,
we had Zoloft instead.
We had Zoloft, that's right. I did like Angelina Jolie for the most part, and I really feel like 1,000 gays are going to come running at me with pitchforks for daring to say anything negative. But I really feel like she did a lot of, and Will, you were kind of talking about this, when she tried to do that like over the top, like maniacal, smiley, like it just totally was. I don't know. It made me laugh instead of making me feel afraid or chilled. And I think it was supposed to make me feel afraid or chilled. So it kind of had the opposite effect for me, I guess. And I'm trying to figure out if it's just bad direction for Angelina Jolie, or if it was just she's not quite right. I don't know. It's hard to say. I just know it didn't quite work for me as well as I would have liked. Everybody else in this movie was completely forgettable to me. Like, even the girl who played Sleeping Beauty, like Zoloft Beauty, whatever the hell. I don't know. The only person I really cared about beyond Angelina Jolie was what is his name? Diablo, the Raven guy.
Yes. I forget the character's name. But yeah, the little raven guy. Diablo, yeah.
Yeah. The dude that she would like just turn into a raven or crow or whatever it was. And so I've said it, many times in the past, if I don't really have someone to care about, it's hard for me to stay in the movie. And I liked some of the stuff they were doing with Maleficent initially, but then I just felt it got a little too a little too rote for me. I was hoping it was going to take more risks. We'll talk more about spoilers. In fact, we're going to switch over here very shortly. But I'll just say this: for me, this really isn't a rush out and see. I like that they tried to sort of wickedize the movie. I'm kind of confused about some of the choices they made, though. Kind of towards the end, we'll talk about that. But I mean, this might be a fun rent it and watch it with your kids movie when it's out on Blu-ray. But really, I mean, I wouldn't go see it in theaters. I don't know. I just don't think it's worth it. But
yeah.
Anyway,
I agree. Sounds like we're in agreement.
Yeah. Well,
let's just call it a day, guys. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. No, just kidding. Just kidding. All right, let's go ahead and move into spoilers.
It's been a rough week for new releases.
I know. All right, so we're going to go ahead and shift into spoilers, guys. You listen at your own peril, blah, 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 blah. You know the drill. After a year and a half, I hope you're familiar with how we operate. So let's move on into Spoiler Town. Was anyone else really uncomfortable when the prince went to kiss her without her consent while she's sleeping?
Nope.
No? You weren't uncomfortable by that?
No, I mean, you mean that, so no. There were parts.
When the
there were
fairy
other
was
parts of the film were way more uncomfortable. Like that right there was. I mean, that's the classic thing. She's asleep. Prince goes in for a kiss, right?
Yeah, but this time we had the fairy being like, "Do it, Rape her. Do it. It's okay. Do it.
Well, no. I mean, here's the thing, right? The same thing happens in the original Sleeping Beauty. There was a little bit more development of the relationship between Aurora or Rose and Prince Philip. Before, leading up to that, they had that whole musical scene. I remember you once upon a dream, blah 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 blah, and they kind of fall in love. This time in this movie, they meet in the woods. The guy says, "Oh, I think I want to see you again. Okay, bye." And then they go and then they're on to another couple scenes, and then before you know it, it's time for true love's kiss. And I'm thinking, I hope. First of all, he kind of had to be persuaded to kiss her, first of all, which is fine. And then he kissed her, and I'm like, please don't wake her up, because this would ring so false, because they're not really in love. It's too early. They didn't earn it. Yeah. And I do applaud the movie for that twist. That change is very similar, if you notice, to what they did in Frozen. True love's kiss did not come from a hetero romantic love. It came from another type of love, a more familial love, I guess we could say, more organic and more earned, and I like that. I like that message, although I hope every movie doesn't, fall into that trope now. So I didn't mind that at all.
But I'm confused. I'm confused because, okay, so Disney is retelling, I guess, the Sleeping Beauty story, and now Aurora does not awake from her true love's kiss or whatever. But like, is that the story they're still telling people, that that's how she woke up, or is this like alternate universe Sleeping Beauty now? Like, I don't understand what Disney's
trying to accomplish. It's really alternate universe because they did change the story.
The idea behind this is that, and any of these like retelling types of things, is it's like you think about these types of stories in terms of like how they're probably passed down within the film world itself or within the fictional universe. Like, this is what happened with Philip next, and this happened, and then there's the one story that's passed on, blah blah blah, and this shows the other story, like the other side of it. So the two can coexist from the standpoint that, each one is remembering things slightly differently. So it turns basically the events of both story slightly unreliably. But that's the point of the film. That's the point of a film like this.
It's more than that, because at the end of Sleeping Beauty, first of all, it's Maleficent who turns into the dragon. She doesn't. In this movie, she commands her sidekick to turn into the dragon, I believe. Right?
Yep, that's correct.
And the dragon is killed in the original Sleeping Beauty, and therefore Maleficent is killed.
Right.
In this movie, they totally retconned that, and Maleficent at the end lives.
If you do Wicked right next to Wizard of Oz, there are differences. There are dramatic differences between the two stories.
No, but Wicked did not change the story. The parts of Wizard of Oz that are in Wicked are not in the original Wizard of. How do I say this? The stuff that they show that ties to the Wizard of Oz is not in the original Wizard of Oz movie.
We could have a whole different conversation about Wicked.
Yeah.
There are similarities. There are some things, but there are plot points that diverge dramatically, and that's because we're talking about this is a retelling from someone else's eyes. And the same thing here. Like, I'm not defending the execution of Maleficent. There were a lot of things where this film fucked up, but I don't think that like the fact that there are a few plot point differences between it and Sleeping Beauty is the problem.
No,
the problem is that the differences were bad.
Well, okay, so here's my thing. Spoilers for Wicked are incoming. If you haven't seen Wicked, why are you gay? But so here's the thing. With Wicked, they're telling a story around some of the plot points of The Wizard of Oz and keeping those plot points pretty much intact. During Wicked, we see that the house has fallen on the sister or whatever. And we get a scene right after Dorothy has left on the yellow brick road. So we get a scene between Glenda and Elphaba, kind of in that space. They're not changing what we saw in The Wizard of Oz. They're adding something onto it that we just didn't see. Same way with at the end of Wicked, right? So the Wicked Witch, she dies or whatever. in The Wizard of Oz, that's the end of it. Yay, she's dead. But in Wicked, they're adding something additional on, and that's that, oh, no, wait, she didn't die. She climbs up out of the door. There's the Scarecrow, right? So they're not changing the plot events of what happened in The Wizard of Oz. They're just tacking things onto it that make it more interesting. Here, it's a direct change. Maleficent doesn't die. The dragon isn't killed. Like, think about it from the perspective of the people who live in this world, right? So now it's not going to be, yay, the evil dragon was killed, we're all saved from this evil force. Now it's, oh, she's gone back, and I guess she has her wings, and she's a good fairy now, and the prince didn't wake up Sleeping Beauty. Like, it's totally different. Like, it's totally, like, rewritten it. It's not a retelling from a different perspective so much as it is like a retcon of big elements that have come before, like you said, Jim, and inserting something new in there. And I think that's
the choice, and those are the choices they made in this movie. I'm not saying necessarily that on face value is bad. I'm not saying I didn't like the movie because of that. I'm just saying that, like you will, I don't think some of those choices really, I don't know, they didn't work, I guess. The dragon scene was cool, but we really didn't get much resolution. I mean, the other thing they did, which was very weird in this movie, is why did they kill off the queen? Like, they didn't show her get killed, but, like, she was dead at a certain point.
I think the reason they wanted to do that was just to showcase just how much of an asshole the king was, and like how that relationship wasn't important. Like I said, that wasn't a good decision.
I think they wanted to emphasize the Aurora Maleficent relationship. I think they wanted to take all the other relationships away that she could have had with her mother or whatever. She had no mother, so maybe they wanted a way for her to bond to somebody else, some other female character. That being Maleficent, of course.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the film falls apart. Like I said, the stuff that they changed, I'm fine that they changed stuff. We'll go back to Wicked later on because they
Sleeping Beauty.
Nah. Yeah, I mean, the thing is that when we're dealing with like a retelling from a different person's perspective, you're going to have differences in the story. You're going to have plot points that change. I'm fine with that. The problem with this film is that the plot points did not make a cohesive film. You have this opening sequence that shows this that starts off extremely dark. There's a big portion of this story that you could call a fairy tale rape revenge story. Like there was and I said trigger warning beforehand. There's this sequence where Maleficent has her wings taken from her. She is drugged and by her lover, and in the middle of the night, something precious and pure is taken from her. And Jolie, to her credit, probably the most powerful thing in this entire film was the sequence when she wakes up and realizes what's happened to her. That shit was really, really intense and raw and uncomfortable. Like, that was a metaphor for her having been violated. The problem we then have is then the film goes directly into her going into revenge mode. Cool. But you then lose it immediately because she falls in love with this baby. And that's the parts that I thought I didn't care for as much. The part where the three fairies have taken Aurora off into the woods, and now Maleficent is watching over them, and the fairies are so inept that Maleficent has to care for Aurora, and then Maleficent falls for Aurora.
They pretty much did everything they could do to kill the baby.
Yeah, and the thing here is that, like, if you want to have like this redemption story, you could have made it. You could have done it in a way that wasn't as ham-fisted and clumsy as what they did here. She goes from "I curse you" to, well, you're kind of precious, really, really quickly, jarringly quickly. And I think part of that is the fairies were so inept, and everyone else except for Maleficent is either evil or stupid in this film.
That's because the baby smiled at her.
The baby smiled at her.
The baby had a cute smile.
I mean, they could have done that, and I don't know how necessarily they fixed it. They could have.
The roofie scene. Where he roofies her and steals her wings. My only issue was when she woke up, I didn't get that feeling. Like, when it was happening, I'm like, oh my God, is he really going to do that? I was like on the edge of my seat. But then when she wakes up, I don't know if it's her acting or what it is. I just did not buy her anguish at that point. I just didn't buy it. And I think just the way they played that one scene, I guess it worked for you. It just didn't work as much for me.
I think she didn't really play up the emotion. Like, it was very, like, it was subdued. For an actress who is, I don't think anyone would ever accuse Angelina Jolie of being a subtle actress. I thought that she had brought subtlety to that particular sequence.
Yeah. And I maybe would have liked to see her go over the top. You know what I mean? And it just she never really emoted anything over the top in this movie, like anger or anything like that. Maybe I would have liked to see something a little stronger from her.
Yeah. I don't know, guys. Final thoughts on Maleficent.
Boy. Oh, can I bring up one more point?
Sure.
Yeah.
What do you guys think of this movie's view on men in general? I mean, we had the men are either very weak, leaders, husbands, kings, rapists. They're lapdogs for, evil fairies. I don't know. It's kind of a switcheroo. I'm not saying it may not be, warranted or whatever, but this movie definitely had an anti-guy vibe to it.
I don't know. I didn't get that. My thing was that it's not that it had an anti-guy vibe. It's that it had really, aside from the crow assistant, it really had one male of note, and that guy was just a lapdog, rapist, shitty asshole father. So the problem is it's really hard to say how this film sees men, because it really just has one man who has all of these negative properties, which could also be...
The eagle guy was the lapdog. The
eagle guy was actually quite... he was one of the things I liked best about the film. Like, I thought that actor and that character were just... He had these looks on his face, like when he would look at Aurora or look at something, where I just was like, I'm interested in what's going on here. I think that the problem here is not necessarily that the film doesn't like men. I think that the film doesn't like characters that aren't Maleficent or Aurora or Diabolo, because the fairies were stupid. Like the film did not like the fairies either. Like, it took one of the most. I think no one's gonna watch that. No one's gonna watch this film and think that the fairies were presented in a favorable light. Like, if you look at classic Sleeping Beauty versus Maleficent, the fairy stock as characters went down dramatically.
Oh yeah.
Whereas,
absolutely.
And same with Prince Philip, because he's kind of dopey. Aurora, I would say her stock went down because she's very dopey in this. Like, she's charming and sweet, but she's also just kind of doe-eyed and dopey.
Yeah.
The only person whose stock improves or at least stays the same is Maleficent, who is, tries to texture around. So yeah, I don't know that it's necessarily anti-men. I think it's just anti-creating good supporting characters, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think I agree. Absolutely. All right. Any other final thoughts before we move on, gentlemen?
Yeah, I'm sad that they took out any musical numbers from this movie. The original had a couple in there. One of them was, of course, the Once Upon a Dream thing. I know they snuck it into the trailer, and they may have had it in
credits. Yeah,
they may have had it in the credits. But I know it's not a musical, and neither was the original. It just had a musical passage in it. It was just sad to kind of see them totally kind of ignore that a little bit.
Right.
I mean, that's pretty much it. Like I said, I wouldn't rush out to see this one.
Yeah.
I think what I didn't enjoy about it was that so this is a very dark film. It goes to some dark places. The problem is that the joyful sequences aren't done properly. Like, the beginning has this whole sequence where she's got her wings and she's flying, but it's just not very well done. Like, I wanted to see her just more jubilant and joyful during the happy moments, so that when they go to the dark places, like that contrast is stronger. So I like the dark stuff, but because the joyful stuff is very poorly written or poorly executed, it just makes the film dreary and maybe too dark or just too much of a slog. I wanted to see, like, I would have liked if the fairies weren't idiots. I would have liked it if maybe they brought some energy and some real humor as opposed to just like some like Three Stooges knockoff stuff like we got here.
I agree. Yeah. I agree.
I think a lot of people did love this movie, though. I mean, I'm seeing some of the reactions on my social media. I mean, people love this movie. I don't know if it was made for gay men or what. I'm trying to figure out who this movie really appeals to the most. People say, "Oh yeah, 10-year-old girls." I'm like, I don't know. There's some stuff in here that I don't know if I'd want my young daughter to see. You know what I mean? It's weird. Yeah. It's a very weird movie.
I would think gay men would like this. Like, Jolie's performance as Maleficent almost seems like something that, like, it didn't feel like it would be a stretch to see that particular character appear on, like, Drag Race or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
Just kind of the mannerisms and her approach. But
he was fierce.
Indeed. All right, guys. Well, let's go ahead and move on to some plugs. Jim, what have you got this week?
I don't have much. I guess I'll just talk about a little bit and remind people about our, if you're here in Tucson and you're into movies, look on Facebook under Botop Movie Bears. That's BOTOP Movie Bears. We don't have anything right now on the schedule, but we're trying to line some things up for some movies that are coming up soon. So check us out on Facebook, Botop Movie Bears.
Awesome. Thank you. Will, how about you?
I'd like to tell people about a movie that is actually good after us kind of saying, naysaying a couple of films. This one's out on VOD. It's on Amazon. You can go watch it right now. It's called The Double. It's directed by Richard e80, who is the guy, you probably saw him in like the IT Crowd. He's a guy that this is his second film to have directed. Stars Jesse Eisenberg. It's a dystopian future film where you've got this young government clerk who's just crippled by social anxiety. That's Jesse Eisenberg. That's one of the roles that he does best, right? Social anxiety. And then he encounters an exact duplicate of himself, who's this confident, charismatic, just dripping with sex appeal, just asshole. And so he's trying to, deal with the fact that there's another version of him. e80 borrows very, very, very heavily from, like, if you like Terry Gilliam's Brazil, it's very similar in terms of style, look, and tone. There's a little bit of maybe some Wes Anderson, maybe a little bit of David Lynch thrown in there as well. Plus, Eisenberg, he's one of those guys who's an actor. I think he really only has two modes, awkward and asshole. And he gets to play both of them here. So, really cool film. It's on Amazon. It's on video on demand. It's called The Double. Check it out.
Okay.
Awesome.
Thanks,
awesome. All right. For me, just something funny this week. Our friend Bill Zanowitz from the Comic Book Bears podcast turned me on to this today. It's just a funny video of a hot bear dad and his little girl lip syncing to Love is an Open Door from Frozen. I'm addicted to Frozen, even like 8 months later, I guess. But man, is that dad freaking hot. He's super woofy. It was kind of weird, like, being turned on watching him, like, lip sync to a children's song. I don't know. There's probably, like, a year's worth of therapy in that experience today, but it was pretty funny. So we've got a link up on our Facebook page right now, but I'll put it in the show notes as well, so you can check it out. It's a lot of fun. So, all right, guys. Well, thank you for joining our MBP Double Feature. Hope you enjoyed our discussion of A Million
Come back
Ways
next week
to Die in the West and Maleficent. Definitely come back next week. I don't know what we're reviewing next week.
Of Tomorrow.
Edge of Tomorrow.
Edge of
That's
Tomorrow,
right.
yeah.
That's right. Live, Die, Repeat. So that should hopefully be a good film. We'll see.
We'll be cruising, man.
Indeed. So, all right, everyone. Well, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you all next week. Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.